The title of the talk today is Unleash the Power of Operator Data to Convert 9 times more paying users. So what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, to understand what that is the company I work for is called Bango. We're not a games developer. We're a mobile commerce company. And what we do is we help operators to process payments, and we understand what things are being passed through the operator platform with regards to purchase of content and games and so on. And we help app developers to understand which users are paying for data or paying for content, and as a result of that, they can target those users. So many of you may not know that, actually working with an operator is a good way to basically acquire users for yourself. So how does this all work? Well, the operators basically have a subscriber base of mobile users. Now, you can target mobile users just by understanding, by targeting your ad campaigns towards people with mobile devices. But the operators already have a relationship with those users. They have brand awareness, and more importantly, they understand how they're purchasing things. So the big thing that I want you to take away from this is that another way to target people who can pay inside your app is by understanding what their buying behavior is, not their browsing behavior. So typically, when you see an ad, you go somewhere and an ad is displayed to you. There's an impression of some kind. You can click on it and so on. And sometimes you're retargeted as a result of visiting certain places. And in the mobile world, what we can understand is who's actually buying content. And the Bango platform itself here is sort of trying to understand what the buying behavior is. And then once you understand what the buying behavior is, you can target your particular ad towards them to basically acquire more users. So what kind of things can an operator help you with? Well, if I was to say to you as an app developer, if you wanted to enter the Southeast Asian market or the LATAM market or the Indian market, how would you go about doing that? Now, there are various different ways. Obviously, you can customize your app to target those particular regions. You can find a partner in the region, or you can set up offices in the region. But in this particular case, what we're saying is that a mobile operator already has presence in that region and can introduce you into that particular country. And we have knowledge of who those mobile operators are, and we can connect up operators and developers together. And once we connect you up, we can help you to understand what that user base looks like, right? That user base, you can say, well, I'm just going to send it to everybody. That may not be the most effective way to do something. It's much better if you're targeting people who want to make in-app purchases to understand who is actually going to make the payment, And how do you find out who's going to actually make the payment? Well, you can segment the audience in various different ways. One way is to have a look at, for instance, someone's actually ready to make a payment. They've registered a payment method, but they've never actually made a payment. And that might sound surprising to you, but there are many of those users, and those users are ripe users in terms of targeting an offer to. They're just waiting for the right kind of thing to be given to them so that they can make that purchase. You might want to have a look at, okay, well, who's buying content similar to me, to my content? So I've got a particular type of game. I want to see, whether they bought any competitive games or any related games. And as a result of that, you might want to say, okay, send this offer out to those users. You can send out tailored offers to each different segment if you want to, or you can send out a generic offer to all of those. The most common one that we see, the easiest one, is to target the top spenders. So you have a look at, who are the best spenders within that particular country, and target your offer towards them. You can also look at, if you have a subscription-based service, who are the regular spenders? So who's actually made a payment over the last few months, and do that. And if you target people based on buying behavior and not browsing behavior. And the example that I give is like, we've all been to somewhere like Amazon and had a look at a digital camera and then gone away and then gone to another site, and then suddenly you're retargeted with an ad for that digital camera that you looked for. Well, that's based on browsing behavior, right? But I've gone somewhere, I've shown some intent, I've shown some interest. But if you actually purchase something, the intent that you're showing when you purchase something is so much stronger than when you're actually browsing somewhere. And so knowing who is buying that and how much they're spending and what they're purchasing is actually so important with regards to being able to sort of target the right offer. So within Bango itself, there's some leaflets that have gone out to you. You can basically sort of register and get onto a marketplace. And inside that marketplace, as a developer, you then have the option of working with a number of operators that Bango is already connected to. So the Bango platform is connected to over 40 plus operators worldwide. We've got presence in all the different continents. And within there, you can say, I'd like to work with a particular operator. And that operator can offer you different types of campaigns. The types of campaigns that we're talking about can range from something like an SMS notification, an in-app push notification. Some of the operators have their apps pre-installed. Or you can work with an operator to actually pre-install an app. Or you can work on a more traditional display advertising campaign using banner ads or video ads. Or even things like, some of the bigger sort of players actually look at things like in-store promotion. And all of these different types of campaigns are all listed on the marketplace, and you go there and you request it, and that allows you to form a partnership with the operator to then market your game. So segments. So we're talking about, okay, here's the overall user population. How can we divide that up? We can divide that up in many different ways. Here are some examples. So these are basically saying, well, all these users are actually able to pay. We can say that these users, there are particular types of users who purchase quite often. So they're the real high LTV users. High spenders, so we can have a look at the people who are spending the most. That's not always the same as the ones who are spending regularly, because you can actually make large purchases infrequently, or you can make smaller purchases over the space of a year. They're both of interest to app developers because they're the high LTV users. The loyal customers, they're the ones who continue to do so over a long period of time. We understand what type of content people will buy. If you're watching video or you're playing esports, we also understand how each operator compares to each other, so you can actually sort of work out who the right partner is as well. And this, although it may not sound very interesting, transaction success and failure analysis, why is that important? Well, that's important because when we look at some of these payments, for instance, just recently did some analysis in Indonesia, and we saw that there was something like 80% of transactions for a particular game failed. Right, and then you kind of go, okay, so these are people who are actually trying to buy something, but they weren't able to do so. And there are, what we can do is we can basically understand why that's happening. In some cases, that's happening because the user doesn't have enough credit. In some cases, that's happening because there's a spend limit, i.e. there's a cap on how much you can actually spend on a single purchase. And we can work with the operator and the games developer to kind of adjust those limits to make that more successful in the future. And of course, we have to be very careful about personal identity, so that's always guarded. Okay, so how does it work? Well, it's fairly simple. It's kind of like, you partner with the operator by going to the Bango marketplace. There's some details on the handouts that you've got there on how to access that. Once you do that, and you connect up with an operator, you then define who the segment of users you want to target, and then you have a look at how well the transactions are going. So that's how it works. Now, that's the theory. right? What, if I was in the audience, I'd be interested in is what's the practical reality, you know? So where are we with this? We've got about 200 developers signed up to the Bango Unleashed program, which you've got details of. We have just started running some projects in 2018. We're running many more. There's some very positive results, which I'm going to share with you right now. But, you know, it's early days, and we're looking for more people to come on board. We're looking for sort of like more operators to work with developers to actually sort of like, you know, show that this can work in reality. So let's have a look at a couple of case studies that I've managed to get approval from to talk about. So the first one is Smule. If you don't know who Smule is, then I will explain in a minute. And we chose Indonesia as a market. And why did we choose Indonesia as a market? Southeast Asia, you know, a lot of people want to break into a lot of countries, games developers outside of Southeast Asia want to break into that particular region. Indonesia has 200 million, roughly, users, so that's why it's particularly attractive. The target audience that we chose were the top paying users in the last 12 months who have not made an in-app purchase inside Smule. So the type of users that we are very, very good at identifying are the ones who are going to make in-app purchases. I think, you know, if you're just going to do a general land grab of users and you just want to get as many users installing your app, there are lots of different ways. If you want to target your user acquisition to those who are going to pay, then the Bango data is very, very powerful with regards to that. So in the last 12 months, they've never made a purchase of the content. The offer. So in some cases, you know, when we've worked with developers, they've not made any offer at all. But in this particular case, they were offering 50% off a subscription. It's a subscription-based service for the first month. After that, it's full price. And how did we send that message out? Well, Indonesia is a rarity in some ways in that you can actually send out text messages. It's considered okay to do that. You probably wouldn't do that in a lot of Western European countries, but we chose this particular method there because that was a way that we could basically, you know, run the campaign very, very quickly. And what they wanted to do, so the overall thing that the developer wanted to do was to convert as many free to install users to paying users for the monthly subscription. So that's the aim. So Smule, if you don't know, they're the #1 karaoke app. You know, they've got a lot of users worldwide. It's a fun app. I wasn't aware of it before I started having a go on it. You can basically record a song and then you can share it with your friends. I wouldn't even dare to record a song by me. You know, I think that would be too painful for everyone here. But that's essentially, you know, what that app is about. And you went into the Bango marketplace, chose the Indonesian operators to work with, and as a result of that, the Indonesian operators agreed to run that campaign with Smule. And as I said, the goal was to increase the conversion rate, right? And the conversion rate that they wanted to achieve was to basically double the organic conversion rate that they have. So going from free to paying users, doubled the number that they currently sort of like are seeing. And they see Indonesia and Southeast Asia as in general as a big growth market. So they wanted to prove that, you know, does your data actually work in this country? So we set this up to run across 3 operators, because remember, no single operator can actually provide 100% coverage. So we set it up to work with 3 operators, and we sent it an SMS message. This was the actual SMS message, not particularly creative, but that's what they wanted to send off. And obviously the part that Bango played was that we identified who were the top spenders over the last 12 months, and they hadn't purchased Smule before. That's quite important to measure that. So what was the result? Well, the results were that actually we had a reasonable click-through rate, 1.92%. You expect anything between 1 and 2%. But the number of users who actually made out of the ones who clicked through, 4.4% actually went on then to make a purchase. Now that was the thing that comes from the title of the talk. There was 9 times more paying users as a result of targeting the users that Bango platform identified. So they were amazed by the results, and in fact so amazed that they were saying that, actually, is this correct? Can we verify this? And so we kind of went through everything in detail, explained how we'd found all the data, and they were happy with that. And as a result of that, we're now running a second campaign, and in the second campaign, the results are even better. And we're even surprised by how much better it is, and hopefully, once I've got all the results together and approval, I can share it with you. But right now, all I can say to you is that it's a lot better than 9 times what we're currently seeing. One of the things that we did do in the second campaign is we tried to learn from the first campaign, and so we said, okay, well, we chose the last 12 months, top paying users in the last 12 months. We then also looked at those who actually purchased, what else had they bought? Did they buy any similar products? Were there any clusters of other games, other content that they were buying? And as a result of that, we used that data to then select the cohort for the second campaign. So we said, okay, well, we know that the ones who purchased Smule also bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these other content providers. So when we choose the next cohort, let's choose the top spenders, but also those who had purchased this type of content before. And we think that's one of the reasons, that's certainly a contributory reason for the second campaign running even better. So very quickly, the next one is with Rovio and Verizon, and here, again, very simple, top-paying users. The offer was a free in-app purchase, and in this particular case, there's a pre-installed app called My Verizon, and send the message through that. And what they wanted to do is acquire new users and increase the spend. Obviously, you get the free in-app purchase, but then increase in-app purchase after that. You all know about Angry Birds, so I'll skip that one. And here, we're just saying, the top users, target those, right? And then give them some incentive to download. So basically, if you download it, then you'll get some exclusive stuff. So obviously, our part in it was to identify who those top spenders were. The special offer was sort of like in-app purchase of a chest of gems, and the push notification was sent through to the Verizon users who were the top spenders, not every single one. So the results here, again, very, very positive. Increased the sales through Google Play in the US, and more repeat purchases, increased lifetime value for the users, and 17% more new customers. This is during the campaign. And again, really, really positive. There's There's a number of others that we're working on, but these are the two that I can share with you right now. And I guess, the most important thing to understand here is that, by targeting the users who can spend, who are able to spend, who have shown a propensity to spend, and who buy a certain type of content, your return is much greater as a result of that. So with that, if you're interested and you want to have a look, then basically come along to the marketplace and sign up there. There's some details with you. And at this point, I'll stop and open it up for questions.
Great stuff. So, do we have questions? Oh, we have loads of questions. That's what I'd like to see. It was very tied between the two of you. I'll start here, though.
How sustainable is this? How quickly do you saturate those top players?
It's a good question. So it's at the early stage. So I think the acquisition of those users is going to be sort of like limited to the subscriber base, right? So you could say, okay, well, if we're only targeting 10%, let's say as a number, we're targeting 10% of the top spenders. That's then saturated and done. But then you could move down from there. You can say, well, let's move to the next 10%. So eventually, of course, you will reach some saturation, but you can start off with the highest and then move lower down.
Cool. And there's another question here.
Yeah, so I don't know if the question makes sense, but is there a particular relationship between the Google Play Store and the operators, or could you export this model to other Play Stores like the ones in China or Samsung's own Play Store, that sort of thing?
In theory, yes, we can. At the moment, in reality, we're connected up to operators via the Google Play Store. So purchases that are going through the Google Play Store are being recorded. We do have connections with the Microsoft and the Samsung Store as well, but they're much smaller amount of the market. China is a huge opportunity, but it's also incredibly difficult. And if in theory you can do that because basically the purchase data that's coming through is coming through the Bango platform.
Great. Chance for one last quick question. We've got one over there. It does need to be a bit quick, if possible.
So you mentioned that all the data that you have been gathering so far is, as said earlier, like through the Play Store. But what is the possibility of acquiring data from the broader data footprint of the internet users of these operators? Is that something that is possible, or is that too much infringement on the personal information?
Sorry, can you clarify what you mean?
Yes, I'm more curious, like, is it possible to use your service to get more detailed view on the general browsing and content consumption habits of the
Okay,
users?
I'm with you, yeah. So we are working with a number of other partners outside of mobile operators to look at cookie-based data. Right, so there's nothing I can talk about right now, but in theory, it's the same. It's the same. Basically, like if purchase information can come through, and you segment the users based on their buying behavior.
And on that note, thank you very much.
Thank you.